we go. Here we go.
1993, and the gauntlet has been thrown down. Phil and his team had to crunch out a 30-minute computer animated cartoon before Christmas. A computer animated show?
Really
well, that's new.
Hey, Jonah, I
and
still
would
rep
be
that every day,
very
though.
challenging.
Every day, bro.
But Phil had
Rep
the
Jonah
power
every day,
of
bro.
God and vegetables on his side. Okay, so what do we have to do?
Panic.
We need some animators. Okay, said Phil. So he hired Chris Olsen and Robert Ellis. Okay, boom, done. Next, we
Okay.
need some voice actors. Mike will voice half the cast. Why don't we just voice the characters? And maybe,
That's
I don't
smart.
know, Lisa. Lisa, you can voice Junior. How about that? Okay,
Really?
boom, done. Next, we need some music. How about this guy named Kurt Heineke, who works as the music director at our church and has zero experience working on shows?
Makes
Now,
sense.
as often as Phil would run into bad luck, this was a particular occasion where Phil was very lucky, because Kurt was amazing. And in August of 1993, Phil changed the name of GraphX Studios to Big Idea Productions. And he and his friends and his family were trying their best to hype up people for the arrival of Veggietales. And would send out letters to other families and friends to get them pumped up. And honestly,
That
real
is-
talk,
that
that's
is
kind
so
of cute.
wholesome.
Here's a letter in the mail of a cartoon cucumber that my son's making. Please watch it.
No.
But
That's so
the Christmas
cute.
deadline was quickly approaching. And by the skin of their teeth, the team was able to make their deadline. The first
Oh,
official
Cordy.
episode of Veggietales was completed. Phil had a policy in mind for Veggietales: to make a Christian show that wasn't just good for Christian viewers, but for all viewers. And I truly believe that he achieved that. Like I said at the start of the video, I knew non-Christian families who loved the show and would watch it all the time. That's
just-
truly a
that's good,
testament
bro.
to the show. First off, the
Weird.
direction Big Idea went for the animation was brilliant. Focusing on the eyes and face of the models gave these characters such a massive edge when it came to expressions. So many expressions. Then there's the music. For a guy who was new to producing music for videos, Kurt absolutely knocked it out of the park. The songs in Veggietales are, in my opinion, genuinely
There's Cebu.
fantastic and still hold up
Yeah,
to
the
this
music
very
is-
day.
music is great.
While researching this video, I listened to the soundtracks on Spotify and was like, whoa, wow, these songs are catchy.
They
Silly
are.
Songs with Larry is legit some top-notch stuff. Then there's the writing. Sometimes the episodes had original stories, and sometimes they were reenacting stuff from the Bible.
The Bible.
This is the Bible.
You question the words of the mighty Jimmy?
Regardless, the writing was always on point. It wasn't
That's
afraid to
Bible.
have fun, even with biblical content. Veggietales was able to put its
Oh,
own
David the
original
Giant
spin
Pickle.
on these tales from the Bible.
That's the one I
Even
always
the
wanted to
dark
watch,
stuff.
but I could never find it
Remember
anywhere.
that story from the Bible when King David was envious of this soldier's wife and sent the guy to the front lines of a battle
Yeah.
so he would die and
Yeah.
David could hook up with his wife? The Bible's wild. Okay, well,
Bible's crazy, bro.
Veggietales used that plot for an episode. Instead of King David,
It took me years
you
to
got
figure
Larry.
out what King
And
George
instead
was
of a
supposed to
woman,
be.
he wants a rubber ducky from Junior. That being said, Larry still sent the kid off to go to war.
He did.
And the poor kid came back with PTSD. You
The
know,
Great Pie
for
War.
kids.
Oh, they're wearing spoons for armor.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Okay, okay.
I've come to talk with you again.
I need to rewatch King George.
And of course,
Rubber
the
Ducky.
characters are a lot of fun. Bob, Larry,
Rack Shack and Minnie,
Junior, Jimmy,
prime-time
Jerry,
Veggietales. Let's
Pa
go, buddy.
Grape, Nezzy. They all have unique, interesting, and defined personalities that work well off each other.
I think
For
that's
example,
Duke in the Great Pie
Bob
War.
is the
I
straight
think it
man,
is.
and Larry is the silly goof. Good stuff. That's a good dynamic.
I don't remember
there
that from
are even
Sumo of the
adult
Opera.
jokes in this show. Now, they're not dirty, and they went over my head when I was a kid.
Why did the chicken cross the road? Weed eater.
Like this bit with the IRS and how this Peach was trying to claim Larry's cookies As an adult, I find that hilarious. And there's
Dang.
also plenty of references to pop culture stuff, like Star Trek or The Holy Grail. As a matter of fact, I am very certain that the humor from Monty Python was a huge influence on Phil and Mike.
I fart in your general direction.
Overall, Veggietales was more than just a show that used computer animation. It had strong writing, great characters,
Very
catchy
much so.
music. Combine
Mr.
all
Nezza.
of this with clever computer
Junior?
animation, and you had something that was truly one of a kind. And people were starting to notice. Phil was flown out to Nashville, Tennessee, to talk to a guy from a Christian music company called Word Records. In May of 1994, they struck a deal, and Word asked for 11 episodes, provided funding, and would be a distributor. Despite this investment of money,
Word's
Big
got it,
Idea
I'm
was
scared.
almost broke and was barely keeping its head above water, since
Really?
costs were very high. In August of 94, the first 2 episodes of Veggietales finally arrived in 750 Christian bookstores. Now, as far as world records go, Veggietales was not the first half-hour-long CGI show. That was claimed by the Crash Test Dummies. But Veggietales was the first CGI home video series
That looks
and the first CGI
something.
series of any kind produced in the United States. Now, despite being the first in a few categories, initial sales were very low, and people at Christian bookstores were not really going for it. Phil even considered at this point selling Big Idea. But then Phil's lawyer said, "Hey, I have a friend who wants to give you $50,000. But in
God
exchange,
dang,
he and
Phil.
I get to own a percent of the company." Phil said in his book that the donor and the friend of his lawyer was jokingly called Mr. Silent, since he worked remotely. This guy would also step in to help with accounting at Big Idea. So the team was growing, and with this new cash, Phil even brought on 2 more animators, Tom
Nice.
Dannon and Ron Smith. Ron would go on to be a key player at Big Idea, and was the guy behind a future series at the studio
321
called
Penguins.
321 Penguins.
No way.
We'll talk about that in a bit. But now, it was early 1995. Sales were still pretty low, and Phil was feeling the burn. But this vegetable powder keg was about to explode.
Oh dang, is it ad time?
So, what caused
ad time.
Veggietales to blow up in popularity? A key thing to remember is that Veggietales was primarily sold in Christian bookstores. Unlike Walmart, the people who worked at these bookstores had more freedom to choose what they wanted to put on the TV. Well, it turns
Yeah.
out
There
that
was a
these
Bible
young
bookstore that was
adults and
always
college
showing
kids who worked at
VeggieTales.
these bookstores really liked Veggietales. They liked the animation. They liked the jokes. Phil even got letters from adults who were like, "Hey, my husband and I love your show. We even threw a VeggieTales themed party for our friends. By the way, we don't have kids." Phil was
Oh.
like, "Wait, what?" Oh, looks
Stop,
like these
stop.
cool college
Stop
kids
that
were
right
eating
there.
their vegetables after all.
I said I don't want any damn vegetables.
All right, that's it, young man. No Bible stories for you tonight.
And guess what?
I
It
need
was
to watch The
catching on.
Simpsons at some point.
After that, Phil got a
Minnesota
call
cute?
from a
No, that's
company
not
called
Minnesota- that's
Good
not
Times
Minnesota
Video,
cute. That's
which
not-
was known for making terrible rip-offs of Disney films. They were like, "Hey, how about you dump these Christian distributors and get with us? We can sell your talking vegetables at Walmart, unlike them. But if you want to do that, you gotta tone down the Christian stuff."
Nah.
Phil thought it
Get outta
over,
here.
but ultimately turned
outta
them
here,
down. VeggieTales was his ministry.
Hey,
So
Esther.
taking God out of it would completely defeat the purpose. Phil kept his faith.
Oh, was she the first one with
Enter
irises? Ew.
Bill Halgen. This larger-than-life 50-year-old guy who cursed like a sailor but prayed like a saint. He
Dang.
smoked cigars. He slammed down booze. He walked around in crazy suits with custom patchwork pants with clashing
Yo.
colors. The guy was an
Yo.
absolute Chad, and he was there to help Phil. He offered
I
to
was
do
about
all
to
of the
say, he does
business
look
stuff
like a
that
Chad.
Phil was too busy to take care of. So Phil made Bill his vice president of licensing. By mid-1996,
Who was the president? of
Big
licensing?
Idea was
Licensing.
blowing up. Sales were finally exceeding expenses.
Nice.
And Phil decided to step away from animating and instead focus his efforts on more of a leadership role at the studio. Kind of like what Walt did for Disney. As a matter of fact, Walt was a massive inspiration to Phil. He admired Walt's creativity, his movies, his accomplishments. Phil wanted
Same.
that.
Big same.
He desired to be the Christian Walt Disney. His words, not mine. 1997 would be an explosive year for
Rumor
Big
Weed,
Idea
let's go.
Productions. Videos were flying off the shelves and breaking records. And the merch, books, clothes, costumes, puppets. And numbers
What
were up
the
across the
fuck?
board. Phil
Don't
might have
do
stepped down
that.
from animating, but he found himself incredibly busy, rubbing shoulders with big names in the industry and getting hit up by companies who wanted a piece of that vegetable action. Now, a big part in our story, and I mean big, was the arrival of Dick Leach, the owner of Lyric Studios and the father
they
of
did,
Barney the dinosaur.
Yep.
Phil
Yep.
really liked Dick. And appreciated
Shut up.
that he was a man
Shut
of
up, I hate
conviction and principle. Lyric distributed multiple franchises and would be a good pick for Veggietales, since the previous distributors were becoming more and more unappealing with their questionable business practices. With Lyric at Big Idea's back, they could become big. Like, really big. Despite the success of Big Idea around this time, drama was starting to flare up
That's
with
the
the
story
team.
of Flibber Lou,
More
right?
people were being hired at the company, and the personalities were starting to clash. Also, the question came up, should the people we hire be Christian? This is a Christian ministry after all. Or
I don't
is that
think
too
that-
unreasonable?
I don't think that
So
would
the more
matter
people
with
they
Veggietales
hired,
specifically.
the less Christian Big Idea would become. Phil was kind of caught between a rock and a hard place with this one. He was afraid the Christian vibes of Big Idea might scare off employees. And to Phil, he hated the idea that others could mess up his life by leaving him.
Don't leave me.
But there was no
Stop.
time to worry about
Stop it,
that.
Bob.
Phil had a dream, a vision, to take on the big, money-loving, unethical giants of the entertainment industry. Disney, Viacom, Warner Brothers. All of them soulless corporations who stood for nothing and did not care about the heart and soul
Very
of
much
America.
so. Very much so.
But Big Idea was
The devil
sharpening its
himself.
blade and was ready to offer a company that actually had morals and stood for something decent.
Phil allows himself to hope for more than glory, such mad hope. But there it is. Against a secular world, against all odds, we can do it. We can take down the corporations. We can win.
Don't look at me like that, Phil.
Phil wanted to make something truly significant, something that would outlast him. He thought, God wants me to make a great company. And Phil was ready to commit everything to that dream. His goal for Big Idea, to markedly enhance the moral and spiritual fabric of our culture through creative media. To
don't know,
build
I
the
think
most
that's Samson
trusted
and the
of the
Tubas
top
or something,
4
I don't
family
know.
media
Gideon
brands
and the
within
Tuba War, I
20
think. Is that what it's called?
years. Well, if you're aiming to do that,
No, I
you
don't have it.
probably need a CEO. So Phil brought on a business mentor of his, this guy who was previously a CEO of a billion-dollar insurance company. Phil was floored. Sales were going up. Videos were being sold at Walmart. Phil was being invited to speak at conferences and conventions.
Hey, there you
And
go.
Big Idea was getting a ton of press coverage. Heck, it was getting so good that other Christian companies tried to get a piece of that vegetable pie. Bible Man, Gaither's Pond,
Oh, Gator's Pond.
and of course, the
Don't-
critically
don't you
acclaimed
dare.
Joshua
Don't
and the Promised
do it.
Land.
No! No!
There would even be
at
shows
least
that would
it wasn't
satirize Veggietales, such as Drawn Together, SNL,
Oh,
and
dang.
The Simpsons. That's when you know you really made it.
Yeah.
Now, Phil had confidence in the growth of Big Idea. He was hungry and wanted to see his company get big fast. And since he was the majority shareholder, he had full control. So there was nothing to worry about, right? Right? The team was growing. Presidents, VPs, HR, PR, marketing. Veggietales broke records in 1998 and sold over 6 million videos that year alone. It had become the best-selling
dang.
Christian video series of all time. Phil felt invincible. Big Idea could truly take on the world and become a media empire. Something to rise up and challenge these unethical corporations. Literally nothing could go wrong.
I don't like the way this sounds. I don't like, no, please. Not like this.
So here we are, the beginning of the end.
No!
Sure, things were looking good for Phil, but all of that was about to come crumbling down. And the canary in the coal mine? Mr. Silent. He said to Phil, "I'm concerned about the growth of the company. We're spending too much money." And Phil replied by moving the location of Big Idea to a larger office. It was, after all,
Phil.
God's will. The studio was even catching the attention of Disney, since some of their own animators were quitting to go join
Really?
Phil and his team.
Wow.
Yup, Mickey Mouse had officially noticed Bob and Larry.
Oh, I'm gonna chop you up and put you in a salad and feed it to my dog. Not Pluto. Goofy. That dog.
Oh, dear Lord.
Stop calling me a dog. I'm a sentient creature. But things were about to take an
Okay.
ugly turn.
Hold up.
The staff started to fight more often.
Really?
Marketing people were starting to tone down the Christian stuff on the Big Idea website in favor of a moral active demographic. Christian employees were trying to witness and share the love of God with non-Christian employees,
Okay, yeah, I
leaving
definitely see
Bible
where the
tracts at their
problem's
desk.
Oh, I just don't like that. Mom!
HR did not like that. But Phil did not want to fire people. He did not want them to leave his life.
Oh, no,
Also, Phil
Phil.
mentioned that he wasn't having as much fun anymore. It was all business this, business that. He was stretched way too thin. And then treachery was abound.
Oh, no.
So it turns out that the president, CFO, and other executives of Big Idea were meeting behind closed doors, conducting
Really?
business and estimating numbers without Phil's knowledge. Lines were officially being drawn in the sand.
Wow. Okay.
Phil and Mike were then about to make another critical mistake, creating a cinematic Veggietales movie.
Jonah?
It was called
Wait, all of
Jonah.
this was going on when
And Phil and
Jonah
Mike
was being
thought
made?
it could work. Okay,
Wow.
so the passion's there. What about the finances?
The salad guys.
Kind of. We'll double back on this. Up until now, 1998, Veggietales video sales were going up exponentially. But 1999 would be the year when sales would finally slow down by a considerable percent. In 98, sales increased by 200%. In 99, it was only 10%.
Oh,
And while the
wow.
sales dipped, the staff only continued to increase in size, and expenses went up with it. They were paying for a larger staff, and the cost to make a single video of Veggietales was now around $1 million.
Oh, wow.
Is that the sound of a clock ticking?
It's time to stop.
The list of problems started to grow, and fast. Strap in, folks. This is about to get ugly.
I'm not
the
ready
suits
for
of the
this.
company were pushing Phil more and more out of the picture. Meanwhile, employees were leaving Big Idea because it was too Christian, while other employees were leaving because it wasn't Christian enough. And then the
dang.
cost of Jonah continued to rise. What they estimated to be around $7 million in production cost and $7 million in marketing would eventually cost more.
How much more? How much more?
And then this dream building that Phil was trying to secure for Big Idea in Lombard, Illinois, blew up in his face. They thought this building would cost around $10 million.
Psych!
It ended up costing $17 million. And the bank they were
wow.
working with would only loan out $8 million. This, folks, in my opinion, was the first real big blow to Big Idea Productions. And it was only going to get worse. the project was canceled. And Big Idea lost $4 million in their investment for the building. Ouch. Phil then took a much-needed break after that, but came home to absolute chaos. It got to the point where Phil sat his executive team down and had a let's talk kind of meeting. It did not go over well, and the president of the company refused to talk to Phil until he apologized. Sales for Big Idea in 1999 totaled $38 million.
Oh, that's not
In 2000,
that's not
the
a lot.
executives were estimating $77 million. That was very optimistic. And worst of all, the estimated cost in 2000 were going to be around $73 million. And most of that was going toward non-animator jobs. Phil did not like that. In January of 2000, the numbers were in, and Big Idea missed their forecasted sales by 80%. And at that moment, Phil decided it was time to fire his president. The guy had been screwing Phil over for long enough. Also, a bunch of other executives were let go, or straight up left on their own accord. Phil was trying to clean out management, and in the process, he crunched some numbers, and then it dawned upon him. Things were really bad. Big Idea desperately needed money. It got to the point they were going to run out of money in only a few months. And they still needed money to finish their movie. But they were $20 million short of being able to complete it. So they reached out to their bank for help. The bank was willing to lend them a helping hand, but there would be certain stipulations. If Big Idea wanted that fat loan, they would have to be kept on track and meet certain numbers. If not, the bank could foreclose on the company. So Phil signed the agreement in August of 2000. 1 month later, and they were out of compliance, meaning the bank could shut Big Idea down. Right about now, you guys are probably thinking, this is the worst it gets.
Please don't do this.
But I'm not done yet.
In late
No,
2000,
please.
the expenses for Big Idea were skyrocketing, and sales were also declining. Jonah was in production, and money was extremely tight. So tight that Phil had to cut down his staff yet again. All the executive people were practically gone by this point, except for a new president who stepped in temporarily. The new president did some number crunching, said that Big Idea would be out of money in 60 days, turned to Phil and said, "What did you do to Veggietales?" Where are we on our oof counter? 2 so far? Well, there's number 3.
Big oof.
Despite the cutbacks, it wasn't enough. And in May of 2001, Phil went forward with a massive layoff, and it broke his heart.
God.
He hated to see people go, but it was the only way to cut cost. Unfortunately, it still wasn't enough, and Phil was left with yet another hard decision. He could, 1, fire even more people and only do a Veggietales episode once or twice a year, or B, throw a Hail Mary and hope that the Jonah movie is a huge success. To Phil, choosing option A would be akin to losing faith in God, and he wasn't about to do that.
He sounds
Phil and
like
Mike
that.
also had the idea of doing a spin-off of Veggietales called The Cartoon Adventures of Larry Boy.
Did that
But
ever
it would
take
be
off?
done in Flash to save time and money. By the way, Phil, if you're watching this, you said in your book that Dexter's Lab and Powerpuff Girls were done in Flash. That was wrong!
Oh, dang.
Who do you think you are? Yeah, get on my level. Get back to me when you have a YouTube channel.
I already have one.
Stupid. What have you ever done with your life except for making my childhood? Big Idea also launched another series called 321 Penguins that was headed by Chris Olsen, who, at this point, was essentially running the animation studio. The hope here was that Big Idea could leverage
I remember 321
Veggietales
Penguins being pretty
and
good,
use it to
though.
expand their brand.
Like,
with
not
other
amazing,
shows.
but it was pretty good.
Guess what? Didn't work. A lot of fans didn't care for the visual style of Larry Boy, while 321 Penguins wasn't nearly as popular as Veggietales,
Yeah.
but cost almost just as much to make. That would be oof number 4. And then, as is the running theme in Phil's story,
Wait, that was a vegetable.
things got worse. So
No.
it turns out that Big Idea never officially signed the contracts to give distribution rights to Lyric Studios. Instead, it was more of a verbal agreement, which meant the contract was not legally binding. Phil only signed up with Lyric because he liked Dick.
Stop.
I knew he was a good man who kept his word. If anything about Lyric ever freaked Phil out, he could walk away from it. Well, it just so happens that Dick was selling Lyric to a company called Hit Entertainment, the corporation who owns Bob the Builder, Thomas and Friends, and a bunch of other kid franchises. And to make matters worse, there was no way for Phil to talk to Dick about it, because soon after, he died in a freak accident.
Oh,
Phil
gosh.
did not want to sell Veggietales to Hit. But he also knew if Hit did not own said property, they would most likely not promote it as much as their own franchises. So, in early
probably
2001, Phil made the decision to leave Lyric and signed up with WEA instead, which was the music distribution company at Warner Brothers.
Oh.
Ironic. Phil wanted to stand against Warner, but now needed their help. They offered to advance enough money to Big Idea so they could finish Jonah, though they would eventually have to pay them back. And 10 days after announcing this deal with Warner, Hit Entertainment slapped Big Idea with a lawsuit.
Why you bullying me?
What?
They were mad.
In the nights, dream divine, I want to see you standing there. In the nights, dream delight, I found so